Yeah.
I hope everybody's paying attention today because we have a returning guest, and his name is Samuel Chong, and he interpreted the Thiaoouba Prophecy, which is a very interesting book about a guy who was kidnapped for, 9-10 days on another planet. And I've been listening to this book, and also he's got a new adventure coming up with the Illuminati and doing some things with the book, a very important book in their association. So how you doing today, Samuel?
Very good. Thanks for having me back.
Well, it's very, very interesting because, through this, I'm on a mission myself, and I'm always trying to explore creation and discovery. And I say there's two mindsets in the world. There's a creation mindset, and then there's a discovery mindset. And in listening to some of this stuff in the book, even this story with this other planet, they are still in somewhat of a discovery mode. I mean, why do you think this discovery concept is kind of linear, through the universe? It seems like if this is true and this is something that we can utilize for information to try to determine, how all this stuff was created.
It's very true that this book talks about the creation of the four, in the sense that in the very beginning there were four forces created by the Creator, the Great Spirit. When it imagined everything, it actually really wanted to create everything in his imagination. So there's a big bang, and then using the four different forces, it created the planets, the stars, the plants, animals, and human beings. The first force that they used to create the planets and stars and rocks, everything that doesn't move, is called the atomic force. And according to this book, and the second force the Creator used to create was the oval cosmic force that created all the plants. And the third force that they used was the oval astronomic force that created all the animals and also the human beings as well. But in addition to this, when everything was created, the Creator wanted to experience all the happiness and sorrowness from the human experience. So it inserted a tiny portion of itself to each one of us. So that's a spiritual force. That's a fourth force that it created when the creation started. So human beings, in a sense, are part of God, and God is part of us. So we are the creation of the Creator, and we all have the sparkles of divinity. So God wants to experience everything through us. So this is why we have everything that happens to us, like the challenges we face in life. And this way we can learn spiritual lessons and then give the feedback to God through our higher self. And this is also why we do have reincarnations, as proven by some of the scientists and psychologists like Dr. Raymond Moody or Dr. Ian Stevenson, that we experience everything and then learn from each of our past lives as well. But once we die, we sometimes give up, or most of the time, or all the time, we give up our physical body, and our astral body leaves the physical body and joins the higher self. And then we reveal what we did in each lifetime, in the past life, and to learn what we did correctly or incorrectly, and then decide which family to go into in the next life. So we reincarnate, and then we go through this kind of river of oblivion, forgetting all the past lives. And this is why most of us don't remember our past lives.
Well, when we did the first interview and I came up with this, I had this rationale creation of four, and I knew that the universe was in four parts, and I think this creation is linear, and there's a little bit of a difference in my thought process of the bloodlines, because I think there was four bloodlines. But when you said the four powers that God used, one was the atomic power, right?
Yeah.
The you said oval cosmic
yes,
power?
Oval cosmic, yes.
And then the astronomic power?
Yes.
And then the spiritual power. So the atomic would be the foundation, the cosmic is, what'd you say the cosmic
the plants,
was?
The creation of the plant, yes.
The oval plants. And the astronomic was what?
The animals and human beings.
Animals and human beings. And then spiritual is obviously emotion, esoteric, and kind of our emotions. I have this thing about breaking down sensibilities and how to handle sensibilities, because one thing we don't talk about, and when the spiritual part comes into play, one thing we don't talk about, which you could identify parts of this within these four things, is the non-conscious, and what that lineage is bringing to the table. So people need to realize that the spiritual part is kind of like a judgment call of life. But I think if we can predetermine and understand how to anticipate some of these things, I think the spiritual piece could be understood a little more. I was told by my Reiki master that my bloodline was from John the Baptist. So I was starting doing this research. And this is something that is very interesting to me that could throw a little bit of difference in what this thing is talking about, because I don't know if we're going back far enough. Because what I did discover in some of my abilities, right, and being told about this John the Baptist thing, I'm from the North Carolina mountains, right? And I started doing research, and if you look at the Precambrian era, right, the Precambrian era is the beginning. That's 4.6 billion years ago. So when I started going to this light center up in the mountains, and there's a vortex up there and so forth, and they start talking about these stones in this area that were 3 billion years old. And this has been validated by science, and it's weird that science gives you this information, but it almost contradicts history. So if you understand that the Precambrian area was the beginning, we have to understand that I think that something created the uncreated. And I had this structure there. There's a monolith there. There's a stone there that's a monolith. And then there's a similar phoenix-looking structure that's pointed directly at this monolith stone that is exactly west. When I took my compass, I stood in between it. It was exactly west, because they used to use these things for astronomical things back in the day. So, if these are the densest stones in the world, and they're the oldest stones in the world, and they say the Blue Ridge Mountains is one of the only places in the world that land structure that never changed, are we going back far enough in history to explain evolution? Because we may not, because this book has some information here, but if you're thinking, 4.6 billion years ago, and then you do the research of the Precambrian era, the Precambrian area is 90% of the Earth's history and a third of the history of the universe. So I don't know if you've ever thought about anything like that, but when I was told this, because this makes sense, because this would, I thought, the Egyptians and things, I thought they may have came here, but based on our bloodline and natives, whatever it is, if this was the beginning, the Precambrian era obviously predates Egypt. So potentially this bloodline could have came from the Precambrian era around the world. And then there's levels of creation, right? Does that align with any of your thought process? Have you ever thought about anything like that? Understanding that we got to realize that something created the uncreated?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at the statues on Easter Island, the statues of Momma on Easter Island, the Great Pyramid of Egypt, and also some of the structures of stones on the continents of South America and also parts of Asia or India, I do see that the remnants of ancient civilizations having far more advanced technologies than us, modern technologies. And I do think that we did have quite a few great resets in which technologies were lost. And far back, according to this book, on the other hand, it says that we all came from different planets. For example, the blacks and the yellows came from a planet, and the Caucasians came from a different planet, and the ancestors of the Polynesians and the Native Americans came from a different planet, and the Hebrews came from another planet. So we originally all came from different planets, and we definitely didn't evolve from apes or gorillas or monkeys. There have been far more advanced civilizations that existed on Earth, but because of natural disasters, for example, like asteroids hitting Earth or earthquakes, these civilizations kind of got wiped out. So this is the theory of this book, and I do believe that we originally came from different planets or what some people call bloodlines as well. And this is very interesting because we need to really look at our past to learn about our future. Because in the past, there were wars amongst ourselves on on Earth or on different planets, and sometimes they involve atomic distractions as well. So we have to learn the mistakes from the history, but sometimes we miss that out.
Because when I listened to this book more too, I always had this thing that everything is a fraction of source, right? So if God has done this in this universe multiple times, there's fractions of other creation, right? So let's say if Earth is the centerpiece of the universe, and God's done this repeatedly, right? And you start to have these fractions of creation within the universe. Do you think these fractions of creations and civilizations are trying to help their own civilization? Because that's kind of something that kind of resonated with me in this book. Are they trying to help their own civilization, understanding that Earth is the centerpiece? Because when you and I'll throw in this one other piece about soul contracts. Been on this thing about soul contracts. When you understand soul contracts and you understand that everything is a fraction of source, what's your thought process on that? Could these ancient civilizations be trying to, help themselves while improving the process, right? Because they didn't completely get to where they wanted to be. Because my understanding with soul contracts is the ultimate thing about the divine is feeling life. They're saying us living on earth is heaven on earth. That's heaven on earth. What do you think about that rationale?
I think we are all here to learn spiritual lessons, and we do have soul contracts before we were born. We were destined to do certain things, and there are certain events that are destined to happen so that we can learn from this kind of challenges that we will face. There are different ETs on different planets in our solar galaxy or in our Milky Way galaxy, and also in the universe. And according to this book, they're categorized by different by 9 different categories. We on Earth are living on category 1 planet, the lowest category, unfortunately, but there's nothing to be ashamed of because we're just like elementary school students learning the basics and having a harsher environment in order for us to learn more. But the Thiaoubans in this book, they come from category 9 planet, so they never die, they never age. So they're very beautiful beings, 9 or 10 foot tall, angelic looking, blonde, and also they can perform all the miracles as performed by Christ. They can levitate, they can communicate through telepathy, and they can materialize objects or make themselves disappear. So they are just like college professors guiding us and mentoring us throughout history. And if you look at the Bible, you are going to wonder who really caused the destructions of the 2 cities, Sodom and Gomorrah? Who really parted the sea for Moses? And who really gave the manna to the Hebrews to eat during Exodus so that they could survive? Who really put the embryo of Jesus into the uterus of Virgin Mary so that the young Jesus would be able to be born? And then he traveled to India, and why there's a tomb of Jesus in Japan? If you do a search, you're going to wonder why there's a tomb of Jesus in Japan. And who is Christ? What's the reason that Christ resurrected 3 days after? Actually, he was just to show people that there is life after death and there is reincarnation. But as we all know, the Catholic Church councils removed the concept of reincarnation from the Bible. So this is why there's a misconception that the reincarnation doesn't exist. So the church, the organized religions are acting as an intermediary agency between man and God, the creator, when in fact we can connect to the source, the creator, direct. We don't need an agent to represent ourselves. We can just pray, meditate, or just have a good night of sleep to communicate to God through our higher self. So I think it's very important to realize that actually one of the most important sentences in the Bible is the kingdom of God is within you. So this is why when you have challenges, look inside for answers.
Well, that's the thing, we talked about last time that speaks to the creation of 4-2. When I realized that, the bone in our heads, right, that has the angle, if that's on a flat surface that's connected to our pineal gland, that it has a 1/4 slant. And they say that the pineal gland is God's data center. So if you say 4 powers of creation connected to the pineal gland, that's a very interesting concept because that's supposedly where the sensory is, and that's something that people really need to understand more in their life, because the more sensory you have, the more creative you are, the smarter you are. So you want to think about decalcifying your pineal gland because because that is God's data center. And one thing that stuck out to me in this book as well is atoms. They talk about atoms a lot and saying that, we all are made of atoms. So this speaks to something I've questioned in creation with like Einstein and Oppenheimer, and even the Newtonian model of reality, which I think is behind the curve, right? So if you understand that we're all made of atoms and all these atoms are on the quantum field, which is the universe, and on a grid, we shouldn't be manipulating these atoms if this what makes up, who we are and what we are. What do you think about that based on some of this information in the book?
I think definitely we should learn the lessons from the past, because if we do manipulate atoms, there are going to be distractions coming up or ahead of us. Because in the past, before the Great Reset that I just mentioned, there were nuclear wars, because in ancient civilizations, they discovered atoms and made atomic bombs. Actually, the blacks and the yellows had a war on their original planet, so they almost caused an entire destruction of the two populations, and they only left like 100 or so people. And then they learned their lessons, and then they began to love each other, and they began to really harmoniously live amongst themselves. But what really caused the atomic wars in the past were jealousy and hatred, the concentration of focus on material wealth, because there's only a thin line between jealousy and hatred. So if people just focus on material accumulation, material wealth, then they're going to be jealous of each other and hate each other, and wars are going to be created either by us directly or by a group of people behind the scenes manipulating the two parties and causing conflicts. So I think we need to realize that we should not destroy ourselves by manipulating atoms. And actually, the ETs have been warning us that we shouldn't have atomic wars at any cost, because it's going to wipe out the entire civilization. And also, they actually intervened sometime in the past as well. For example, the Book of Enoch was actually written by Enoch through the instructions of the ETs in this book, because when Michel Desmarquet, the author of this book, read the Book of Enoch, he found a lot of similarities between what Enoch experienced and what he described, and from his own experience. So he believed that this group of ETs took Enoch to their planet and then instructed Enoch to write a book. And then Michel Desmarquet was instructed to write this book as well. And if you do a parallel comparison, like a few decades later, the great-grandson of Enoch was Noah, and Noah was told to build an ark. And Michel Desmarquet was taken away by this group of ETs back in 1987. You can imagine, if we don't change our ways, what's going to happen a few decades later. So this is actually a warning to the current civilization on Earth from the friendly ETs.
Going back to the word atom, when you think about we're all made of atoms, but we're going to create things based on atoms that destroy ourselves, and we're created in atoms. I don't know if you're a scientist or whatever out there. It stands to reason that you don't manipulate atoms if we're created from atoms. So hello, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure that out. So I don't know why. When you put it in that perspective, I don't know why we're doing this. The talking about the Precambrian era and this information that what's the guy's name? It was in this book, Thiaoouba Prophecy.
Michel Desmarquet.
Michel Desmarquet was captured and got this information, and they're talking 150, 250 years ago. If this has happened before, should we not start thinking about a little further back? Let's study this Precambrian era. Because it's that place is if these rocks are 3 billion years old, and that's the only place on Earth that's never been manipulated. In actuality, what's very weird, and this is another rationale being up there in the mountains in Chimney Rock, is that the area has it looks like a pineal gland, because I had this thing about it was the pineal gland of Earth, so that would make sense. This is the center of Earth, because they've had people around this vortex up there. Supposedly they've had these visions that this was the beginning of Earth in that area. So how do we take information that goes, that we're hearing in something like this book and then really dive deep and try to understand creation? Because if we understand creation, understand everything is made of atoms and this has been done before, maybe we're cutting ourselves short on the history.
Indeed, we are all created by atoms. But human beings are special in a way that not only do we have atoms, we'll have our astral body, which is the soul or spirit body of a person. So some people can see chakras. So according to this book, the brain of the chakras is actually the pineal gland area, like that location. And in this book, it's very interesting because the author was made to be able to see the aura or human energy fields, and they did this by putting the hands of the masters onto the pineal gland of the author, so that they would be able to concentrate their energies into the author's pineal gland. So Michelle, the author, would be able to see the energy fields of the people and be able to understand not only the languages on Earth, but also languages anywhere in the universe. So he had this opportunity to meet an ET from another planet in which they communicated because he was made to understand all the languages of all the ETs. So we are definitely not alone in the universe, and also there are chakras in human bodies that some of the aura readers can see, and this is very important to know that not only do we have atoms, we will have this kind of other bodies. Some people would say the energy body, some people would say the human energy fields, and also the chakras as well. So it's very interesting. I don't even know, there are aura readers such as Barbara Brennan and also some of the other people who can foretell a person's illness before the symptoms occur just by looking at the auric fields. If they see a grayish area in the liver, and then sooner or later, a month or 2 months later, some of the symptoms would occur in the liver. So we do have different fields or energy fields in the human body.
So what do you think we have to, why are we so hesitant, continue to be hesitant, and a lot of this information's in front of us? I mean, what do we need to take away from something like this book, Thiaoouba Prophecy? What do we need to understand as humanity, as a human race, what have you? What are we, because I think we wait on stuff. Why are we waiting? I think we got to take an initiative, right? And do something for ourselves because it speaks to ourself. What do you think?
I think we need actions because it's a book of warnings. If you're heading towards this path without change, we're going to be heading a catastrophe because the ETs can foresee what's going to happen within 100 years or so. And they see that we are destroying ourselves by acting this way. For example, if you see the country of the United States is being divided now more than ever. So I do want to say to the people that it really doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat. You need to realize we are all created by God, the Creator. And there's a group of people that's running everything behind the scenes. So both the Republicans and Democrats are on their payroll. So they kind of, in the UK, there will be the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. And in China, they would manipulate the leaders as well. So this group of people, they hide behind the scenes, and some people would call them the Illuminati, and I do think that they exist, and they create conflicts and divide and conquer. So that's their motto. They want to create wars so that they would gain special interest through this military-industrial complex. If there are no wars in the world, then the defense contractors, the military-industrial complex wouldn't profit, and they kind of indirectly influence them so that they can achieve their purpose. This is the control of the world, the entire world. So I think it's important for people to realize that. And what are they afraid of? They're afraid of the people of the power of the people. They are afraid that all the people know about this and act together in a concerted fashion through nonviolent resistance against the tyrannies in the world. Because the power of the people is not to be underestimated. We can change everything for the better if we act together. And a lot of people need to understand that we, the people, will lose very little if we have a strike. The special interest groups or the financiers, they're going to lose humongous because they depend and rely on slave labor to profit themselves. But nonviolent resistance is very important because violence doesn't resolve solve anything. Hitler tried and Napoleon tried. They were not able to further their goals. It has to be done through love and the cultivation of the mind and nonviolent resistance.
Well, and you mentioned one thing there about the Illuminati, and I know you're doing something, you're translating an Illuminati book, I think you said. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, this life, our lives, this is a short lifespan. You don't have a lot of time, and, how much money do you need? What is the purpose? Can we not all just live happy and be happy? I mean, what is the purpose of the Illuminati? Why would we need to be in the Illuminati? Because I think if you have money, and live good, how much more do you need? What are you trying to prove? What's the big deal here when life is so short?
I think if you read the book 334 Lies, Lies, you're able to understand where they came from. So they learned the ancient mysteries from Atlantis or from Egypt. So they had this kind of mystic powers or psychic powers developed among their high degree members. So they're able to see the auras or human energy fields. They're able to influence people's mind. They're able to see the past and also predict the future using a special form of astrology. They can calculate at a given moment of time where the major planets are located, where the positions are. So they can kind of calculate what's likely going to happen at a given moment of time. So they are able to do this kind of prediction. This is why the Illuminati card game is so accurate in predicting certain things that would happen in the future. So they have psychic powers and psychic abilities as well. But their goal is actually to rule the entire world and really to create conflicts. A lot of people don't know how they do this. What happens is that they have different degrees, and the low degree members are responsible for influencing the local politicians, and the mid-level people, they influence the mid-level politicians, and the high degree members influence world leaders directly or indirectly. And they don't just influence them through their psychic abilities. They influence them through kind of like manipulation. So sometimes they would use the kind of subtle way of leading certain politicians to act on certain things. And when that doesn't work, they would engage their psychic abilities and to manipulate their decision-making process using their projection of images or mind control. And this book is very interesting because I learned about this book from a forum which talked about how they're able to see auras. If they're able to see auras, they're able to immediately know what kind of person you are. So your sexual inclination, your health conditions, whether you are spiritual or you use intuitive powers, or if you're just a scientifically based person. So they would know everything just by looking at your aura. So they are extremely powerful according to this book, but they're afraid of the power of the people, because when people act together, no matter how strong their psychic abilities are, they cannot really go against the collective consciousness of the people.
Well, when you think about that, is that not using the spiritual piece of creation as a, I don't know, if they're using the spiritual piece of creation and it's very emotional, because I think there's a very emotional piece there. Like you can use the spirituality in an emotional space, but if it has no foundational support under it, do you not think it will definitely run its course and not prevail as they would think it would? Because I think you got to have a foundation under you instead of trying to use a power like that just through emotions. Because I think that's where we're at in the world, where everything is based on an emotional decision.
Yeah, I think we do need to understand the purpose of life, and a lot of emotions are actually the sense of what we need to do, but we need to realize the purpose of life is the constant learning of spiritual lessons. This is what I think that the members of the Illuminati probably don't necessarily understand, that through different reincarnations, their purpose should be just to help the people to elevate themselves. And this is actually their original goal, but for some reason, after a few generations, they departed or they deviated from their original goal. And they are seeking for control but they don't realize that when a person dies, there's the life reveal process that whatever the hideous or the deeds that they did to a person, or tortures that they did through different ceremonies or rituals, they're going to be able to feel that, the pain and sufferings of the people that they tortured through this life reveal process after they die. For example, if I hit a person after I die, I'm going to be able to feel how that person felt when I hit that person. So that's the life reveal process. So it's very important to realize that be compassionate and be loving to each other is actually the key to living on earthly environment.
It's like, do they not realize, unless they're living to be 300 years old, do they not realize that, you got to deal with something after you're here, whatever your soul contract is, if you're an Illuminati member and you have a soul contract, until you reach what God wants you to reach through your soul contract, you're going to keep coming back. Is that not kind of what, they kind of back that up in this book and so forth. Do they not realize that in the Thiaoouba Prophecy book? Do they not realize that?
I really don't think that they realize. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done the things that they did in different rituals. Because if you read the book 334 Lies, those are hideous acts, very, very graphic descriptions of how they torture people to achieve their goals and to obtain the power or the psychic abilities of that person, the person that they tortured. So I really don't think that they have this knowledge. If they do have this knowledge, everything will be much better in this world, and less conflicts will happen. And actually, the author of this Illuminati book realized this at the end of the book, because he, in order to achieve a higher degree, he made a bet saying that if he were able to survive after being buried underground for 41 days, he would be 2 degrees higher than the highest degree that they would have been able to achieve. So this is why he was buried underground for 41 days. And through this entire process, he had a near-death experience. And he realized that everything is about love and compassion. He understands the what happens in the universe and how everything works in the universe by karma and cause and effect. He understood everything. So this is why after he survived the 41 days after buried underground, he changed the organizations. He actually wanted to have the organization having a symbiosis relationship with the rest of the world, not by creating conflicts, but by coexisting with the secret society world, non-secret world. So this is why during a certain period of time in the 90s, from before 2001, there were less wars created in the world because he was ruling the organization. But the reason for him revealing all the secrets and by breaking his vows of secrecy was that he discovered there was a younger person having more psychic abilities than him, and also having a more devilish, evil mind than him, was trying to rise up to the power of the organization. And he was trying to contain him, but he wasn't able to do that anymore. A lot of his allies broke away from him and allied with this younger person.
Mm-hmm.
This is why he wanted to break the secrecy of vows of secrecy by revealing the secrets of the organization and hoping that it can be destroyed from within.
And why are people so afraid to talk about it? If they have this ability and they realize that, hey, if we brought everybody together, we can be more powerful in a sense of positivity, right? If I do have these abilities, because it's this other thing that things about being harmonious in society, and when we going back to balance and disrupting atoms, right? When I realized this thing about music, there was a physicist, a German physicist, that came up with the 440 gigahertz music, which 440 gigahertz music is the standard gigahertz recording in the United States. And when you look at that gigahertz sound, it is not harmonious. It creates conflict. It creates darkness compared to the 432 gigahertz, which is harmonious. It's harmonious. It has a bigger sound. So it's there's things like that are going on that we don't realize, that the standard for music in the United States should be 432 gigahertz because it's more harmonious with the universe and it's in sync. So when you just think about sound and gigahertz and being harmonious, when you create disruption like this Illuminati group creating, do they not realize that that's not in harmony with the universe and could cause cause them more problem, right? When you just think of a simple thing of sound and gigahertz not being harmonious. So if we're going against the universe at this level with our spirituality, do you not realize that it's not going to work?
This is actually their purpose. They're trying to make this world not as harmonious as before. So they want to divide and rule, because if we act together, it's very hard for them to reach their purpose. So this is why they have to divide us. They have to divide the United States and to make people hate each other or have conflicts to each other, and they have to divide other parts of the world as well. So this is their entire purpose to achieve, like, this is kind of the one world government, or being the ruler of the entire earth. So, but people need to realize that we are all under this, we're all creators of the source, the great ether, the great spirit, and we need to act together in order to really survive on this earth. And I have been having a hard time trying to speak about the Illuminati book. A lot of the events organizers, they when they see that I'm going to talk about Illuminati, they say, "Oh, you probably shouldn't talk about this, but you can talk about the Thiaoouba Prophecy, the other book, and also the human energy fields." But because they're being approached by the members of the Illuminati and giving them warnings, so I think this has been something that happens in this world for real.
I mean, the Illuminati's got to evolve too.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I'm saying? It's all about, because the other thing, I had this rationale about perpetuation of when you understand sensibilities, and if everybody's supposed to be, if you understand creation and everybody is one, and everybody's supposed to be harmonious. So if everybody starts from creation, you understand what your non-conscious is, which is your lineage, you understand your environment, and if you understand how to anticipate the sensibilities and emotions of a human being, then know that we're balanced. When these sensitivities through time, let's say this sensitivity moves over here to aggression, right? And that aggression sensibility is perpetuated over time, that turns into a war. Compared to, this sensibility of love, maybe if we perpetuated that more, we're going to go the opposite direction of war. So it's all about perpetuation. And it seems like because darkness leans towards capitalism and capitalism or monetary value or how to make money, whatever you want to call it, that's really the only issue there is. Because, that's what it does say in the Bible, that money is the root of all evil. And I think our financial direction of the universe, or of Earth, financial direction is based off the dark side of perpetuation of certain feelings that may not have occurred if we didn't have this strong monetary, system created in society.
Exactly. And actually, in the book, Thiaoouba Prophecy, it talks about money being number one danger, real danger on Earth. And everything revolves around money. Not just the financial industry, but also the pharmaceutical industry, the energy industry, the education industry. Like, everything is about money. And to profit themselves, sometimes they damage the interests of the public or the people in order to serve the interests of their shareholders. A lot of technologies are suppressed. Stanley Meyer invented a water vehicle, a car that ran on water, but he mysteriously died before he was able to commercialize it. And a lot of cheap and effective drugs or ways to treat certain diseases are suppressed as well. And I do think that we need to have knowledge, because knowledge is power. If we know how to respond to the current situation, if we know how to really effectively and inexpensively cure cancer or diabetes, then we wouldn't have to rely on the products or drugs of the pharmaceutical industry anymore. And if we know how to build a clean energy that runs on water, then we don't need to rely on the energy industry anymore. So we need to have the power, and we need to have the knowledge in order to attain power. So I think this is very important to read the book Thiaoouba Prophecy. And if people are really interested in the secret societies, they can also read the 334 Lies book, but I have to warn them. It's very graphic. It's very disturbing. So it's not for everyone, not for the faint of heart. But I do think everyone needs to wake up and to see what is really going on in the world and to achieve financial freedom, not to rely on the system, because the system damages us. For example, certain diabetes can be cured, but the industry wants the patients to rely on the medications, so they have to keep the medications in order to sustain their life, so they can profit having residual income by having residual income. So this is the system, how the system works. But if people have the knowledge, they can wake up and not rely on the system.
And Samuel, I mean, you've been pretty persistent with this narrative. What's internally pushing you to continue to talk about these narratives?
Because I know the one thing Michel Desmarquet wasn't allowed to write in the book. It relates to the future, not the future of Americans, not the future of the Chinese or Russians or Indians, but the future of mankind. And because in the postscript of the book, it says there are far more incredible things that the author was not allowed to write in the book because we were far from understanding them. And out of curiosity, I went to meet the author, and he told me what that one thing is. And although I'm not able to talk about that publicly, but I wrote an article titled The Second Coming of Jesus Christ. So if we don't change our actions, if we don't mend our ways, then we are going to be heading a catastrophe. But through our collective actions, through the knowledge of power, we can change the future for the better. So this is the whole motivation of me speaking publicly, not afraid of my personal issues or dangers, or I'm not afraid of what's going to happen to me personally, but I really want people to wake up.
Thiaoouba Prophecy, which is a book about a guy who was kidnapped by ancient civilization and was downloaded a lot of information. Is there any, we talked about the creation of four and talking about some of this information is in ancient records. What do you think about going back further in time? What do you think about this creation of four? Where's this information based on what you've researched? Where's this information at?
Well, I think the information is out there, and people just need to obtain the information by being curious. Because if they dig further, they're going to find the truth. They're going to find information about the creation of the four, and they're going to find information about the human energy fields. They're going to find the secret societies, how they run the world. There's a book called The Committee of 300 by Dr. John Coleman that says that there's a group of people that actually select about 100% of the secretaries of states of the U.S. and actually 50% of the presidents of the U.S. were predetermined by them as well. So they're able to understand how the system, how the world works in order to make better informed decisions in the future.
Some of the stuff I talk about seems normal to me, but it doesn't seem normal to everybody else. Why do you think there's a layer of non-understanding? It's almost like they're not graduating mentally, or they don't want to get there. Why? That's what's aggravating to me, is like people have to want to get there first. And secondly, they don't know how to get there. How do you think we overcome that? Just keep talking?
I think the approach that I use is to speak their language, because there are some people who have younger souls. They're not as evolved. It doesn't really matter what kind of degrees they have. Even Caltech professors may have younger souls. Because when I talk about Kirlian photography to a Caltech professor, and then the professor said it's nonsense, even though it's proven scientifically by Russian scientists. So it really doesn't matter which or recognized university they're working at or how high their degrees are. They may have younger souls, but the key is to speak their language, because they have to relate to the information that you give them. If I speak in front of that Caltech professor, I wouldn't talk about anything paranormal or mysterious. I would just try to ask that person to continue what he enjoys and without causing any confrontational debate. I would just try to wake others up more, because by the more people you can wake up, the more momentum you're going to form. And then so by going through this kind of by going at the grassroots level, it's going to be more effective than the top-down approach, because major revolutions will come from at the grassroots level. So it never comes from a politician or the top-down approach. So this is what I'm trying to do to spread more messages to the mass, to the public, than approaching the well-known scholars.
Climate has gotten pretty sloppy, and used to they could hide some of this stuff, but I think people, if they have some intuitiveness and have some understanding and have a normal rationale, I think that's maybe where their rethinking process of what this world is starts, and I think we all got to understand that at the end of the day.
I really want to emphasize that everyone has his or her own soul contract. The spiritual lesson that's to be learned in this lifetime is important to follow your heart, your intuition in making decisions. Even the high degree members of the Illuminati have this kind of a tool or suggestion to follow their intuition, the intuition or suggestion at a given moment of time, to immediately act upon their intuition. So sometimes when they make decisions, they use their gut feelings. They don't use their logic. So I think that's very important to know. And also just try to spread the words among the people, your neighbors and your friends and family members, and not to really focus too much on the well-known people, because they are surrounded by special interest groups or lobbyists. It's not really effective for them to change. The real changes will come from the grassroots level, and that's where the hope is for the future.
And Samuel Chong has, gone on this journey based on interpreting books and information in books. He interpreted the Thiaoouba Prophecy, and this became a bestseller. In Asia, became one of the bestsellers in Asia through his interpretation. So this is kind of his foundational information of how this journey started. So if we wanted to find you and look you up, Samuel, how do we find you?
They can search my name on Facebook, and they can or search the name on search engines. But I strongly suggest people to read the book Thiaoouba Prophecy, and because we have only been covering about 9% of the book, there are far more incredible information, practical information contained in the book that can be beneficial to the readers and have practical values as well. So that book is a treasure, and I strongly encourage people to read it.
And what's one of the practical things that we didn't mention?
The effects of color. The color green has the effects of alleviating migraines or headaches, proven by Harvard Medical School. And also the color pink can reduce muscle strength by 30%. So there's a football coach in the University of Iowa who knew about this and painted the locker rooms of the opposing teams into pink color, and he rarely lost a home game. So that's the use of colors in our daily life.
Well, it's funny you say that. When I went up to the Light Center in Black Mountain, North Carolina, they have a color spectrum room, and I went in there, and you sit in this room, and all this was 7 color spectrum. They flash, right? They flash for about 35 minutes. You go through every color. And when I was done with this thing, I was exhausted. I was completely exhausted. It was very odd, but I felt it's almost like it helped my third eye or something. It's almost like it gave me more definitive visions or whatever that may be. I don't know what it was, but I was exhausted doing that. So there is definitely something to that, and that's something I have not dove into, but I definitely like to find out more about that.
Yes, and the ETs did use yellow light and blue light to disinfect the author Michel Desmarquet when he entered into their spacecraft. So blue light and yellow light have antibacterial effects as well.
Awesome. This has been interpreter Samuel Chong. He's interpreted the Thiaoouba Prophecy, and in the book with you're working with doing this interpretation of the Illuminati book. What's the name of that book?
334 Lies, LIES.
334 Lives. So check these books out. There's a lot of important information. I think that affects everybody in humanity, whether we want to believe it or not. So go check those out. This has been Samuel Chong, and I am John Edmonds Kozma, CEO of Bang Productions. Thank you.